What is going on? Welcome to this week's episode of the Second of Strength podcast. I am grateful you're here. It is, if you're listening to this and live in the United States, then this is Thanksgiving weekend. This is not an episode on gratitude, although I just wanted to take just one moment and express my gratitude to you. I'm super grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you choose to listen to these episodes. I get to be who I am because you are who you are, and I'm so grateful for you. So anyway, this episode today, though, is all about helping you set boundaries. I think that as we think about what's going on in our world, what's going on both personally, emotionally, mentally, and when we think really about our well-being, I think one area that we're not focusing on enough is setting appropriate boundaries in our lives so that we can protect ourselves both from the things that are out there that we don't want in, and also protect those things that are out there from the things that we don't want out. And I think that there's kind of this two-way street on boundaries that we need to really think about. But when I think about boundaries, I would shift the thought and shift the focus on boundaries and turn it into a different word. I would call it power. Instead of boundaries, it's really power. Who are you giving your power away to when you aren't setting up those boundaries? And I think when we frame it and rephrase our mindset around this power that we're giving away, I think it changes the game a little bit. And really what it does is it increases the level of importance of why we have to set boundaries. Because if we are not taking the power in our own life and we are giving that away to other people, then I think we run a really dangerous risk of honestly our well-being and our happiness. So today's episode is all about setting those boundaries and who we're giving power to so that we can make sure that we are in control of that. Because if we don't, again, too many things go awry in our lives. And I think ultimately what's at stake, our well-being and our happiness. So let's talk about it. Talk about our power, talk about who we're giving it away to. And really, there's a couple of different areas. So when we think about boundaries, there's really 7 different boundaries that are kind of in the world that you can set. There's mental boundaries, emotional boundaries, there's material boundaries, like material things. There's internal boundaries, conversational, physical, and time boundaries. Those are kind of the areas that you can kind of compartmentalize and think about the boundaries that you want to set in your life. But when we talk about these boundaries, and when we talk about what really is important and why we're setting these boundaries, it ultimately all starts with you. It all starts with you. And ultimately, what are your priorities? I talk a lot about what matters most. What matters most to you is the defining line of what these boundaries are that you're going to set up in your life. What are the priorities? What matters? Because if you can't define that, then it's really hard to put a boundary around it. And so think about that for a minute, and maybe take just 1 minute, grab a piece of paper, grab a notebook, grab something. If it's on your phone, send yourself a text message, or maybe the note's out, but take a minute and prioritize what really matters to you. What really matters? Is it family? Is it faith? Is it fitness? Is it your finances? I believe in really that we need to fix our focus around all 4 of those different areas. But within each one, what is so important? Is it time with your family? Is it being able to get to your kids' basketball or football games? Is it around finances that you don't want to go into debt? Is it around fitness that you never want to sacrifice on your fitness? What are these priorities that you need to set in your life so that you can form perimeters, form boundaries around them? Because again, if we don't do that, then we are going to put that power in someone else's hands, and they are going to dictate. Think about your time for a minute. If you don't prioritize your time, then somebody else will. Right? If you don't prioritize what's most important to you in this life, then somebody else will, because somebody's always out there. It could be a boss, could be an employer, could be in a relationship. Somebody is always going to take advantage of that, and maybe not on purpose take advantage of it. But if we are not setting the boundaries, then we are giving away that power to those other people. And I think sometimes it can be really hard to set boundaries. And I think one of the biggest challenges with boundaries, as I sit and think about it for a minute, is it is hard to set boundaries because I think human nature is that we want to be accepted by other people. I think that we feel in our heart, in the core of our being, that we want to be accepted by other people. And the reason and the way that you are accepted by other people is by giving, right? We want to be worthy of their love. We want to be worthy of their acceptance. And so we give. And when we give, we are not putting up boundaries in our lives, right? So that's why we need to be really careful about this, because if we're constantly giving, the one that we're hurting is ourselves. And I'm not saying not to be a good person. I'm not saying that, that you shouldn't focus on other people and that you shouldn't be kind, that you shouldn't be loving and all that. Like, I'm not saying any of that. All I'm saying is that when you define what the priorities are in your life, then you will know what you will accept and what you won't accept. And so when you think about that, what are those priorities? And it could be, so think about, I mentioned the 7 areas of boundaries that you can set: mental, emotional, material, internal, conversational, physical, and time. So maybe it's a time boundary that you have, and you go to a friend's house. If you have set up a boundary in your life that you are, you have to be at a certain place, a certain time, whatever that is, for a certain reason, you got to be with your kids, then the time boundary that you would set with that person is, hey, yep, I can come, but I can only stay for 30 minutes. That's a boundary that you can set. If it's conversational, I struggle a lot with gossip, meaning I don't particularly struggle with it, but I don't like it. I don't like gossip. And I think that somebody's always listening. Someone can always hear. And, I just think it's a dangerous game to play. But if there's gossip going around, your personal boundary is that you're not going to participate in it. And so that might be that when it starts, you can stand up and walk away, or it might be that you just say, hey, let's change the subject. I don't really want to talk about this. I don't want to be a part of this conversation. You can shift those conversations. So I think that that's why we do that. But, and the flip side of that, again, being accepted by others, like, do you stay a part of those conversations because you want to be accepted by other people? I don't think so. I think because then you're only hurting yourself. You're only hurting your own well-being. So take a moment and think about that. But within boundaries, there's really two sides of it. There's what I would call non-negotiables or hard boundaries, right? Things that you will never do. Draw a hard line. It's never going to happen. You will not break that. You will not cross over that, whatever that may be, right? And then there's soft boundaries, things that you try and maintain, right? So I'll give an example for me. Over the last 3 years, 2 of those years, I have cut soda out of my life. I just, 1 year on January 1st, I was sitting there, I was thinking about resolutions, and I don't really do resolutions in a big way, but I was like, what could I do? And I just said, I'm not going to drink soda this year. And I stopped all year, 365 days. The next year, January 1st, I drank soda, and I just drank it that year, but not tons, but just like I gave myself soda. This year again, January 1st rolled around, and I was like, yeah, I'm not drinking soda again. So I stopped again this year. And so I'm coming up on the anniversary of that. I don't know what I'll do next year, but to me, and it's a very simple, silly example, but to me, on January 1st of both of those years, I made soda a non-negotiable. I will not drink it. So, whatever's going on, I get on an airplane, the family's drinking root beer with pizza, whatever. I don't have it. I've made it a non-negotiable. I've made it a hard boundary in my life that's not what I'm going to do. So whatever that hard boundary may be for you, it might be alcohol. It might be, in a relationship that you're not going to, hang out with certain people, or you're not going to go around certain people. It might be a work thing where you're going to say, you know what, I don't work on Sundays. I'll never work on Sundays. If the boss calls and says, I'll have a conversation with them that I'm going to go work on Sundays. Like you get to set those non-negotiables, those hard boundaries in your life. And then you've got soft boundaries. And soft boundary might be, I'm going to limit my social media down to, an hour and a half a day. And that could be a boundary that you're setting, and you on some days may come well under that, and other days you may come in over that, but that's a boundary that you can set for yourself. And so when we set those boundaries, though, we are drawing a line. Now, just think about the fence in your yard, or in your yard, if there's a fence or if there's not a fence. And there's really 2 types of boundaries within a fence. One is, or within a yard. One is, the traditional white picket fence or wrought iron or whatever it is. And the other is like these dog wires, right? Like there's an underground fence that we have in our yard. So my dog won't leave that. Well, do the people in your life know that there's a boundary there, or do they not? I wonder, right? Like, I wonder if people, if we've set up these boundaries in our lives and people just don't know about it. And there's some boundaries that we need to communicate out in order to maintain the boundary ourselves. And there's some boundaries that are fine being kind of that dog wire type that we just can put underground, and we know it's a personal boundary for us, but not for anyone. So for me, drinking soda, like, that's not a white picket fence type of boundary. Like, that's something that I've done. If somebody offers me a soda, I can easily turn it down. It's no big deal, but nobody really needs to know, or nobody really needs to be broadcast about it. If you are working at a job and they want you to work on certain days and you're saying, hey, I don't work on Sundays, that's one that you need to put up a white picket fence. You need to define what that is so that people are aware of it and can help you maintain that boundary. And I think people do. When you set those firm boundaries and you take the power back in those situations, people will not try and take that from you, right? They might try to, but you know where that boundary is, and then they know where that boundary is. So think about that as you think about this upcoming year. We've got 2025 coming up. It's time to start setting resolutions. It's time to start thinking about that. It's time to start looking at your vision board and what you want to accomplish in the next year, and what your future looks like. And right now is the time to start laying the foundation of the boundaries that you're going to set up in your life. And it starts with what is most important to you. What are your priorities as you think about your fitness, you think about your faith, you think about your family, your finances, your friends. As you think about these things, what are those priorities that matter most? From there, start building fences. Put those boundaries up around the things that you need to protect. And some of those are going to be non-negotiable. There's no way out of it. That's what you're going to do. And then there's some that are going to be softer boundaries, and that's okay, because some of those boundaries we don't get to control, right? Like, sometimes it could be that, I don't know, you like to be home by 5:30 in the afternoon, whatever, for your family. Well, sometimes your boss, that you need to work overtime or whatever, you can't really be home at 5:30. So we can't really set up those boundaries the way we want to. But what I want you to do is start understanding what are those boundaries that you need to create. What are those non-negotiables? What are those hard boundaries? And I want you to lay those foundations, because you have to maintain power in your life. You just have to. And I know we want to give to others. We want others to accept us. We want all that. But at the end of the day, we have to accept ourselves. At the end of the day, we have to start making promises to ourselves. And more importantly, we have to start keeping promises to ourselves that are going to help us become the best version of us. Because what's at stake here is your well-being. What's at stake here is your happiness. What's at stake here is your future. And it all comes down to the boundaries that you're willing to create, and the power that you are willing to give away, or the power that you're going to keep for yourself. I hope that this year coming up, from here on out, you maintain that in your life. You keep the power for you. You keep your happiness in your own hands, and you don't give that away to anyone else. It's way too important, and I just think that you're too important. So anyway, I hope this helps you set up some boundaries this year. Look, I just think it's one of the greatest life hacks for happiness. If you want to be happier, set up boundaries. If you want to be happier, maintain the power in your life. If you want to be happier, don't give away what is yours to other people, because nobody has your best interest in mind except for you. You're the only one. So anyway, I hope that helps you today. Look, if you haven't done so already, I really appreciate it if you go leave a rating and review for the show, wherever you're listening to this. If it's on Spotify, if it's on Apple Music, just go leave a 5-star rating for the show. It really helps me, and it's going to help other people, because that's the only way, truly the only way, this episode gets recommended to other people, unless you share it, which I would hope you do as well. But unless you share it, there's no way it's going to get out to other people. So anyway, I am super grateful for you. I hope that you are doing well wherever you're at. If I can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out, because you mean the world to me. So I hope you're doing well. I look forward to helping you for a lot of years to come, and I'm just super grateful for you. So anyway, wherever you're at, I'll leave you the same way I always leave you. Go find your 1 second of strength, build some boundaries, and be happier.